This is a special midweek episode of thoughts that have popped into my head that I feel like you, the listeners, should know. I feel like it's important that we have these discussions, and I'm going to try to do better to bring these topics to light a little bit more often. So I'm curious about something. How many people out there grew up wanting to be in the job that they're in today? You know, you were a kid and you saw a movie, saw a TV show, and you thought, man, I want to be a police officer, or man, I want to be a medic, or whatever the case may be. I'm just curious. We see these things in movies, TV shows, books, whatever, and we get this idea of, man, that seems like an awesome job. I really want to do that. You know, in my experience when I was a kid, I had a dare officer in the first grade. I thought he was the coolest guy ever. He had a duty belt, right? And as a kid, I was a huge fan of Batman. I loved Batman. Everything was Batman. I had Batman blankets and pillows and toys and you name it, I had it all. And I thought, wow, being a police officer is probably the closest thing I can get to being Batman. So over time, you know, I did things to try to help set myself up for success as I got older. Granted, this we're talking moving on into high school. I started to get to know police officers. I started to get to know people that are doing the job to try to help prepare myself for what's expected. I'm trying to prepare myself for the academy, for physical agility tests. You know, I'm trying to get all of these questions answered. I'm doing ride-alongs. I know what the job entails. One episode of Cops, and you kind of get an idea. So I'm doing all of these things, and most of us do that. We want to try to pass the physical agility test. We want to be able to pass the written test. So we get study materials and we start quizzing ourselves and getting ourselves ready. And we start to talk to other people within the profession. When we're talking to people about the job, nobody tells us what it is that we may or may not see that could affect us. And sometimes it's because it doesn't affect that person, you know, whoever it is that we're talking to. Sometimes it's to avoid hurting that person who's telling you the story by reliving that situation over again. And sometimes it's to avoid people from backing out because the numbers of applicants are so low. So we don't necessarily share those stories for one of those reasons or many other reasons. But we need to have that discussion. We need to start telling people and trying to help prepare the next generation for what it is that they may encounter when doing these jobs. And it doesn't matter if they're, you know, going to school to be a nurse or, you know, they want to be a firefighter, a police officer, a medic. It doesn't matter. We need to give them a heads up. We need to help set them up for success because at some point they may come across a scene or a situation that's going to mess with them. I talked to a buddy, this was yesterday. A buddy of mine called me up and we were chatting. We hadn't talked in a while. Him and I have known each other for a little bit due to the job. And he dropped a bomb on me. He flat out told me that he has not been in a good space for a while. And for the sake of his privacy, I won't share too much information, but this buddy attempted suicide, or at least was considering suicide. And it hit me hard because him and I had known each other for a while. We don't talk all the time. We catch up every once in a while, but I didn't even know. You know, he was relying on the alcohol for quite a while, which not only was potentially hurting him, but potentially hurting his family as well. And he felt like he was in such a rough spot that he didn't have any other option. Nobody prepared him for dealing with all. We hear about veterans all the time dealing with traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress disorder and depression and addiction. And there's many, many, many different things out there that are helping veterans with those issues, right? There's different programs. There's all these different organizations out there that are wanting to do more to try to lessen the suicide numbers of veterans. You know, everybody talks about 22 a day. Well, new statistics are out now that are saying somewhere around 40 a day potentially are dying from suicide as far as military veterans. Those numbers continue to grow in the veteran community where there are several different organizations out there trying to do anything and everything they can to help them. And again, this is not a bash on any of those organizations because I support 100% those organizations that do that. But if those numbers are continuing to grow when there are people out there trying to help them, What do you think are going to happen with the numbers that I've shared with you in previous episodes of people in police, fire, and EMS that are dying by suicide? Because let's be honest, those numbers are about as accurate as they can be. We're relying on people to report the data in order to get those statistics. There's numbers out there and people reporting right now that those numbers could be off by 30 to 40%. So we have to do more. But it's not just doing more after a situation or when a situation goes too far. We have to do more in the beginning. We have to start having these conversations with paramedic classes, EMT classes, police academies, fire academies. It starts with the department. Really, where it starts with the more senior members of the department. It starts with you who have been on that department for 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years. It starts with people like you who are captains and lieutenants and chiefs. It's one thing to go to somebody after a shitty ass call and have a conversation with them and be like, "Hey, you all right? How you doing? Everything good?" What's a normal response? "Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm fine." How many people will want to admit that there's something wrong? I didn't. It took me a long time to admit that something was wrong, that something was off, because we don't always know. We don't always have a clue that something is wrong and that we need help. So we need to have these conversations in the beginning. We need to share with people the signs and symptoms of depression and post traumatic stress so that they can, one, keep an eye on themselves, but also do what we say we are in public safety and be our brother's keeper and look out for each other. There's so much more we can do, and there's so much more we're going to do. That's the whole reason about this podcast. This podcast is about preserving history within public safety, military side of things from time to time, but it's also about sharing stories from others, sharing those stories that other people have dealt with, their demons that they have fought with, in hopes to help you, the listener, be able to fight those yourselves. Fight them before they become an issue. We got to look out for each other and we've got to do more.